There was a time in America when income could buy a house, when college didn't mean a lifetime of debt, when money actually held its value. That wasn't a myth, that was reality. And then something changed. If you were born after 1985, you didn't inherit that system. You inherited debt, you inherited inflation, you inherited a financial model that no longer works. And before we go any further, this is the Debasement Index. My name is Angel Rios, and this is a channel solely focused on building capital in a fiat world together. If during this video I earn your subscription, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share it on other media platforms, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. This video isn't about blaming your parents. It's about understanding how policy decisions from both political parties quietly reshaped your future. And more importantly, how to escape it. Because the system that worked for boomers, it is mathematically broken for millennials and Generation Z. And to understand how we got here, we have to go back to 1971. Everything begins in 1971. In August of 1971, President Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the US dollar into gold, effectively ending the Bretton Woods monetary system. Before that moment, the dollar was tethered to something scarce. After that moment, it wasn't. Money stopped being anchored to physical scarcity. From that point forward, it became political. This decision allowed the US government to expand the money supply without gold constraints. And what followed? Explosive growth in federal debt, rapid expansion of M2 money supply, asset prices rising faster than wages, long-term decline in purchasing power for US citizens. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. And once money could be created without constraint, the incentives in Washington changed permanently. Because when money is no longer scarce, spending becomes easier. And that's exactly what happened. This wasn't one party. It was decades of bipartisan policy. NAFTA, 1994. The North American Free Trade Agreement was signed into law in 1993 under President Bill Clinton and went into effect in 1994. Its goal was expanded trade between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Trade increased, corporate profits increased, but manufacturing jobs in many American regions declined significantly over the following decades. Entire industrial towns saw factories close or move overseas. Wage stagnation accelerated in sectors exposed to global competition. At the same time, trade globalized labor. Financialization began reshaping housing. Under President George W. Bush, loose credit conditions and housing incentives helped fuel a massive real estate bubble. Banks extended subprime mortgages. Securitized risk exploded. Home prices detached from fundamentals. And then, 2008 happened. The financial system nearly collapsed. Major banks were bailed out through TARP. Ordinary Americans lost homes, savings, and jobs. And what was the response? More debt, more money creation, and quantitative easing. And that ushered in a new era, the era of permanent stimulus. Since 1971, U.S. federal debt has risen from under $500 billion to over $30 trillion. Under Barack Obama, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and multiple rounds of quantitative easing expanded federal deficits. Donald Trump, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reduced the federal revenue, and COVID relief spending added trillions to the deficit. Under Joe Biden, the American Rescue Plan and infrastructure legislation further expanded federal spending. Combined, federal deficits under both parties over the last several decades total tens of trillions of dollars. This is not partisan, this is structural. And when spending grows faster than economic productivity, the currency absorbs the pressure. Inflation is not random. It is a hidden tax. It is a monetary phenomenon driven by sustained currency expansion relative to goods and services. Since 1971, the dollar has lost the majority of its purchasing power. College tuition has increased multiple times faster than CPI. Healthcare costs have surged. Housing affordability has collapsed relative to income. The boomer generation bought homes at 2 to 3 times their yearly income. Today, many markets sit at 6 to 10 times yearly income. Boomers could buy bonds yielding double digits in the 1980s. Millennials experienced near zero interest rates for over a decade. The traditional 60-40 portfolio was designed in a declining rate environment. We no longer live in that world. So if the old playbook no longer fits the current monetary system, we need a new one. The traditional advice is failing. Just buy a house. Just buy bonds. Just save in dollars. That advice worked in an era of lower debt to GDP ratios, stronger dollar purchasing power, higher real interest rates, favorable demographic growth. Today, we face record federal debt, persistent deficits, structural entitlement and spending growth, long-term monetary expansion, and then cash erodes. Bonds struggle in inflationary periods. Housing affordability has structurally shifted. So where do you preserve value in a system? Scarcity-based assets is the answer. One of the most notably known is Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a fixed supply of 21 million coins. Its issuance schedule is transparent and programmatic. It cannot be expanded by a political vote. It operates outside the post-1971 fiat framework. In a world of expanding currency, scarcity matters. Another option is Bitcoin-focused companies. Companies like Strategy, Metaplanet, and Strive Asset Management. They are positioning corporate balance sheets around Bitcoin as a reserve asset strategy. They are betting on monetary debasement continuing and scarcity outperforming expansion. Another option is gold and hard assets. Gold has historically functioned as a store of value across monetary regimes. It cannot be printed. It cannot be legislated into existence. This is not about ideology, it's about mathematics. This is not about attacking an entire generation. Most people operated rationally within the incentives they were given. But the political and monetary framework built since 1971 has created long-term structural imbalances. If you are young today, you cannot follow the same blueprint. You must adapt to the system as it exists, not as it once was. You didn't design it, but you can navigate it. Scarcity over expansion, ownership over promises, hard assets over depreciating currency. That's the shift. That's the opportunity. And that is how you build capital in a fiat world.